I've got fond memories of playing on an arcade cabinet. One particular one. The county fair in my hometown always had an arcade filled with a variety of options, but a friend and I had eyes on a particular franchise that always made it there. The House of the Dead. A light gun rail shooter with zombies, monsters, and bioweapons. A lot of money got lost to the House of the Dead 1 and 2, far more than the asking price of what we're going into today. The original 1997 classic just got remade with new visuals and features. Here is my review of the House of the Dead remake for the Nintendo Switch. The plot of this game is around the AMS Criminal Investigation Group. You play as either Thomas, Rogan, or G, agents of that organization, investigating a mansion being overrun by zombies and bioweapons, all from the mad doctor known as Curian. You fight through the area and his army of monsters to bring him to justice. Now, the plot here is very loosely shown. There's actually very little story at all. You have a bit of lore for each character, and the new gallery will give insight into the monsters, but really it's just, hey, mad scientist made bioweapons, go shoot them and rescue the scientists. It was more fleshed out in the later entries, but gave enough of a setup for a game meant to be played quickly with a cabinet. When it comes to gameplay, this is a first-person rail shooter. Trekking through each area, you'll be shooting down enemies and looking for hidden items here and there to increase your overall score as the game moves you automatically. Now, being a remake, there are things different and things that aren't. First of all, they did a great job of preserving the original experience. The voice work was redone and it got a visual facelift, but nothing about the game was changed. It looks and feels exactly the way it did back in '97, but with better graphics. Now let's talk about features. Like the original, we have local multiplayer available. You can play with a nearby friend in competitive or co-op that can begin from episode 1, or they can jump in mid-campaign. But with controls, the Switch obviously doesn't have a light gun with it. Instead, you can move the reticle around with either the analog sticks or with gyro motion aiming. More on that later. Getting into new content, we have a couple different ways to play. You've got the normal mode, which is a recreation of the original arcade game, and then you have Horde mode, kind of like a harder difficulty. Horde will put more zombies in front of you in many different areas. A 1 to 2 zombie group in the original will turn into 6 to 8 or more, requiring a lot more skill. Additionally, we do have some handicap settings that you can toggle. Aim assist is available on a variety of strength levels. The game can auto-reload your ammo with many different reload times all the way down to a fraction of a second, and each of these handicaps can be toggled differently between players 1 and 2. And finally, they added an unlockable armory for getting weapons outside of just the pistol and a photo mode to be able to take screenshots of whatever is in front of you. Next up is playing the game. House of the Dead proceeds in 4 episodes where you move automatically and have to gun down zombies and other monsters to move to the next area, all leading to a boss fight. As I said earlier, this is a great remake because it's 1-to-1. Every enemy, location, item, etc. is in the same place in the same way it was in the 1997 original. Literally nothing is changed about it. You shoot down enemies in the same way, have a ton of different branching paths and optional items you can get by gunning down a particular item or killing an enemy fast enough. Ammo will constantly run out, requiring you to reload every few seconds, hitting a button in this version instead of shooting off screen. And all of the scientist NPCs are also there to be quickly rescued from attacking zombies in order to gain health items, as well as working towards the 3 endings. But being on a console doesn't mean you don't need skill this time around. Rescuing the NPCs, for example, all of which are needed for the special ending, will require you to gun down enemies that are only a second or 2 away from killing that scientist. And sometimes even the camera is an enemy, trying to get you to accidentally shoot that NPC instead of the enemy. The bosses are also difficult, with each having that particular body part as a weakness, and you need to pump that spot full of lead to stagger them before they can hit and kill you. And they can easily do that even if you're playing on the lower difficulty settings. Speaking of, that brings up difficulty and continues. When you died in the arcade cabinet, you had to throw more money in to keep going. In the remake, you can continue a number of times and then spend points off your score to be able to revive and keep going. It isn't terribly difficult to always have points to spend, but if you're gunning for the good ending, you're not going to want to give up any of those points. Next up is length and replayability. House of the Dead is a game meant to be played and beaten quickly. The 4 chapters can be cleared in as little as 30 to 35 minutes, but it's got a lot to keep you playing. The original had that with different paths and trying to get the 3 endings. After all, back in '97 there wasn't a handy YouTube channel around to be able to watch the endings you didn't get. You had to do it on the cabinet. Horde mode will increase the replayability, as does the armory. That is my favorite new addition that gives the game so much more fun. When you rescue all the NPCs in a single run, you're allowed into a secret room during chapter 4, which unlocks the armory. This will make 4 weapons appear in the 4 chapters. Upon replaying, you can find the treasure chest containing each weapon and add them to your arsenal for use at any given time. That run or another, original mode or horde mode. You can unlock an uber powerful crossbow that will decimate bosses, an assault rifle that lets you rapid fire like you're using the chain gun from House of the Dead 3, and if you're feeling particularly menacing, you can find a grenade launcher that will annihilate and explode everything in your path with incredible ease. It feels like a Resident Evil game when you finally unlock the infinite ammo special weapons and go crazy through the campaign. But considering each run of the game isn't really that long, whether the game is worth that price of $25 is up to you. It all comes down to what you want here, whether you're wanting to relive the original experience you had years ago or just want a rail shooter because it looks cool. And that brings us to controls. The gyro motion aiming is great to have in the game, but at the same time, I never use it. The remake's gyro, they work, but they're extremely difficult to use and use properly. You can modify sensitivity to keep it steady and eventually learn to use it well, but with how jumpy it is, there's just a massive learning curve there. Thankfully, the analog controls work just fine, and even if you do get used to the gyro later, there's also an option where you can combine analog and gyro together. Next up is presentation. Visually, there are some jaggies around a few of the models, but it looks pretty incredible when compared to the original. You've also got 2 graphic modes between performance and quality. The latter ups the visuals in exchange for a lower frame rate, but both look quite good. Now speaking of frame rate, let's talk about performance. This game can get a bit choppy in quite a few places. For that reason, I recommend you always play in performance mode. It is pretty smooth overall, but you will get at least a few choppy sections in each episode. And surprisingly enough, these choppy sections happen more often in docked mode than handheld mode. That's all I got for performance, so let's get on to battery life. The House of the Dead remake gives the original model a range of 3 hours and 42 up to 5 hours and 12. The Nintendo Switch Lite gets a range of 3 hours and 48 up to 5 hours and 23. The Redboxer V2 2019 model gets a range of 7 hours and 16 up to 8 hours and 22. And the OLED model gets a range of 7 hours and 31 up to 9 hours and 2. In conclusion, The House of the Dead has returned in a very faithful remake. Now on the downside, the motion aiming meant to mimic light guns is optimized in a way that gives it an overly massive learning curve, and some performance hiccups keep it from being a perfectly smooth experience. But if you played the original back in the day, it is a great one-to-one remake that preserves the original experience and enhances it with the new visuals, features, and array of weaponry used to turn Curian's abominations into piles of dead flesh. Reviews to Go rates The House of the Dead remake for the Nintendo Switch a 7 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.